Good morning, Morai Rabotai. Continuing on Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, and we started the very important Siman Ayin Hey, speaking about what is considered erva. We speak about Sa'ar B'Isha erva, Kol B'Isha erva, Tefach B'Isha erva. All the Gemarot that we have in Masechet Brachot Daf Chaf Dalet, page 24 of Masechet Brachot, it becomes actually nowadays increasingly is an issue because you're at a wedding, you're at the party, it's simcha, you're in the shul, and by the kiddush, there is man, woman sometimes, or sometimes the mechitza is not fully opaque and see-through in some areas. Can you say bracha? You're at a wedding, you're officiating a wedding, or you're saying kiddush with people around the table, guests that are not necessarily dressed or they don't cover their hair, and so on and so forth. Is that mutar? Is that asur? What's considered halachic nakedness that would bring about a halachic question, right? That's basically a bunch of fair questions which have to be answered. So we started with the Gemara of Tefach B'Isha erva. Chazal saw it that a area of body of a woman that's usually covered, if it's uncovered, that creates hirhur, and therefore it's considered halachic nakedness in front of which you should not be saying any bracha or learn Torah and so on and so forth. Now, and that's b'makom shtarka lechasoto, the place that usually she covers. Afilu hi ishto, even if it's a person's wife, asur likrot kriyat shema kenegda. You cannot say shema in front of it. And v'yesh omrim, the Rama adds davka beishto. There are those who say it's only with your wife, which is a tefach, 8 centimeters is a tefach, basically. We mentioned Chazon Ish holds this about 10 centimeters, but the general opinion of the majority of the halachic poskim is with Reb Chaim Na'eh, which is about 4 it's about, each one being 2 centimeters is 8 centimeters. So says the Rama, aval be'isha acheret, there are those who are more stringent than in a woman that you're not used to, it's not your wife, it's even less than a tefach. If you're concerned about hirhur, even less than a tefach of revealed body part, which you normally should be and expected to be covered, is enticing in a way that would create hirhur. Now, this is an entire industry. Unfortunately, somebody became a Baal Tshuva, and he was working for one of the top world-class design things. He said, there's a whole psychology that goes into it of what reveals and what doesn't reveal, and sometimes it covers, sometimes it reveals, and it kind of like that those peaks that the thing has, it creates the man's mind to be triggered. Those triggers are basically what Chazal are speaking about. That anything that could potentially trigger a person and his thought to go thinking, that is considered not a tsanua, not a modest thing, and therefore if you have that exposed to you cannot be saying dvarim shebikdusha, you can't be saying Torah or tefillah or saying Shema. That's not a proper conduct. So that's basically what we're talking about. And the Rama writes, well, if it's a different woman, your wife, you don't think too much unless it's really revealed. So that's a different story. But if a person's not your wife is exposed even a little bit, that would be considered provocative. That would be considered something that could be a trigger, and therefore it will be asur. Says the Mishna Berurah, Ishto, ולכן צריך להיזהר בשעה שמנקת ומגלה דעתיה שלא לדבר אז שום דברי קדושה. So it says the Mishna Berurah Chafetz Chaim, this happens to be in a regular household with little kids. The woman is nursing, and inevitably parts of body are going to be revealed. Then you stay away from saying divrei kedusha and brachot. If you need to say bracha, you turn away, you say bracha, you come back. It's not the end of the world, but it needs a certain level of mindfulness, says the Chafetz Chaim. But it's important to note that in this area there's no Sephardi halacha versus Ashkenazi. The Kaf HaChaim, Obadia also agree with this, but the Ben Ish Chai, when he gets to this halacha, he says that there are those who say that because she always a nursing woman, during the day many times she's nursing. That's why the baby eats all the time, and if it's derech to be opened in that way, then is considered mekomot hamegulim, and it's mutar for the husband, only the husband, to say divrei kedusha. Now, Chacham Obadia does not agree with that. Kaf HaChaim doesn't, and as we mentioned right now, Mishna Berurah does not agree with that. So therefore, it's certainly fit to be machmir in this halacha in this sense. So, sorry. Well, we're going to get to that in just a moment. There are 3 ways in the Achronim to understand what it means to be exposed to erva and what's the prohibition. In other words, if I have erva in front of me, is it sufficient for me to close my eyes and say bracha because I'm not seeing it when I say the bracha? Or is it necessary for me to turn my face away even though that my body is not turned? Or do I have to, like the Taz suggests, that I have to completely turn around to say the bracha? Now imagine if you're an officiating rabbi at a wedding. What are you going to do? You're going to turn around and say, "Hold a second, let me say the bracha." Like, you can't do that. And Chacham Obadia has the tshuva that in that scenario you can rely, and the Kaf HaChaim also meikara din paskins like that even if you have halachic erva in front of you, you can close your eyes meikara din as long as you don't look at it. But if a person is able to, if you're not in a situation, a scenario like a wedding and you're not publicly presenting something, it's not in front of people. Also, by kiddush, imagine you have guests and you're standing there, you're going to turn around and say kiddush. What are you going to do? Of course not, right? So, you have to also be respectful to people who are there. Kavod habriot is something very important. At the same time that we are unwavering in the halachic precedents and principles over here. When you have what to rely on, especially according to Kaf HaChaim and others, so then we will be lenient. But again, that's something that we will be discussing a little bit later as we develop the sugya and the siman. So just one more piece that I want to focus here is the minhag makom. I want to find this Mishna Berurah over here. It says lachasoto aval panea v'yadea kifi minhag shederech liot megule beoto makom. But the hands and the face, that the custom of the place is to be open. Everyone you go, short of Arab countries, they've covered their face. The hands, the face, all that is considered mekomot hamegulim, the exposed places based on the custom of the society that you live in. That would be mutar. And then says the Mishna Berurah, v'chen beparsot regel. The same would be with what we call the feet, right? From the ankles and down would be basically not considered halachic erva. So if you live in a place that they usually don't cover it, it's mutar. If you live in a place that they cover it, then it will become based on the minhag of that place. V'chen beparsot regel ad hashok, until what is considered halachically the shok. Now here, I want to start a discussion, but we're not going to get to necessarily finish it today. And that is, what is shok? The Gemara says shok by isha erva, right? The area of shok in a woman is considered erva, the Gemara says. Now, what is the translation of shok, right? So here we have a very peculiar Mishna Berurah, and Chafetz Chaim is Rabban Shel Kol Bnei Agola. Chafetz Chaim is one of the all-time tremendous poskim of the world, and Mishna Berurah, of course, has been accepted. The halacha ul maaseh, But here, the Mishna Berurah is a very peculiar Pesach that's based on two sources, both of which are very questionable. One of them is non-existing, the other one is extremely questionable. So it says the Mishna Berurah, Vehu, this is in the parentheses, Vehu Adna Makom Shenikra Ni, Kni, you see Kni, Kuf Nun Yud Aleph, that's Ni, the way it's written actually in English, in Latin, with a K, which is silent, and that's considered Ni B'Lashon Ashkenaz. So he considers the area from knee and below until the ankles not part of shuk. And shuk, according to him, starts from knee and above. And that would be considered erva. Now, the vast majority, and by vast majority, talking about overwhelming vast majority of, I don't know if you can put the number 95% more and more, and within the Rishonim is the same, do not agree with this. I found over 20 Rishonim that they say clearly, or they indicate clearly, that the area of shuk is from knee until the ankle. And that's what's considered erva halachically. There's one Rishon that I found that it's not even a halachic Rishon, it's Marikara in his Perush and Tanakh and the Sefer Shmuel, that he says otherwise, and that's just for intellectual honesty, I'm saying it, but all the poskim of the Rishonim and all the mefarshim of the Rishonim, they all say otherwise. And within the halachic poskim also is the same way, that the shuk, and also in Arabic, like, it's a shuk b'ishayarva in the shorish of the Arabic in Farsi, and Hebrew is the same. And this is what they call saq, right? Saqapa, right? Saqapa is between knee and the ankles. That's where it is. I speculate that the reason socks are called sock, because they cover the garment that covers that area of the foot, right? It covers the ankle until the knee, and that's what's called socks, right? It's all shorish of the same thing, but be as it may, this is not, it's a cute thing to say, and it's an addition, but this is really a sugya in halacha, and the Mishna Berurah over here brings as a source the Chaye Adam, which, if you take a look at the Chaye Adam says exactly the opposite. Chaye Adam says that the knee and below until the ankle is considered shuk, and from ankle and down is considered parsot regel. And actually, the Rabbi Zilber, in his Hagahot on Chaye Adam, he brings this Mishna Berurah and he's tameah. He says, the Mishna Berurah is saying exactly the opposite of what he's quoting the Chaye Adam as a source. And if you take a look at the Chaye Adam is saying exactly the opposite. And then the Mishna Berurah has the Pri Mikadim over here, which Pri Mikadim is mistapek, comparing the shuk, area of shuk in a human being with an area of shuk in an animal. And that safek of the Pri Mikadim itself actually has been also nitpashet in a different work that the Pri Mikadim himself wrote, in which he says that the shuk in human being will be from knee and below. So therefore, this makes a massive difference. Why is it a tremendous difference? Because, as the Chafetz Chaim mentioned, shuk is considered erva. There's no two ways about that. It's considered erva, and the minahag does not change the halacha by something that's erva. Actually, shuk is considered erva midivrei Kabbalah, and it's not just a regular derabanan, because the pasuk calls it erva. The pasuk says in Yeshaya Navi, gali shuk ivri nahar, and he calls it erva, tigal ervatech v'gam tirech erpatech. So whatever shuk is, whatever area shuk is considered erva midivrei Kabbalah, so it has more of a chumrah than a regular derabanan area of tefach beisha erva that's considered. And it's not talu, it's not dependent on minhag makom necessarily, it's dependent on halacha. But what's the difference? The difference is if you are in a society that they wear no socks, they have skirts that covers until below the knee, but there's no socks, right? Is that mutar or is that asur? Is that considered erva? So if you say shok is from knee until the ankle, of course that's asur. That's considered full-fledged erva. If you say that that's not the area of shok, then it all depends on minhag of the place. So if you live in a place that the minhag is to cover it, fine. If you live in a place that the minhag is to wear socks that are somewhat see-through, fine, that's the minhag. And if you live in a place that the minhag is not to cover it altogether, fine, that's the minhag. It all depends on the minhag. And hence would explain the minhag of places that they wear stocking or socks that are semi see-through. They are not opaque. They are not covering basically the area in a way that is fit for a halachic erva, quote unquote. But if you say, like what we mentioned, that this area is considered erva, then you would certainly need to have a full, a proper cover, a full cover that's opaque, and that's, of course, a very big nafkamina. Bezrat Hashem, we'll continue discussing this in the days to come.